All right, today we are going to cover section 1.2, day 2. So we're picking back up there. We are going to solve multi-step word problems. First, we've got a couple warm-ups to do. So go ahead and get those copied down and try them on your own first. We'll talk about them in just a minute. All right, let's talk about these. First one, hopefully you saw that you need to distribute first. So that's going to give us 6m minus 18 equals 24. Then we would need to add the 18 on both sides. Okay, I'm going to pick it back up at the top of the slide since I'm running out of room. After I add the 18 on both sides, I'm left with 6m equals 42. Last step is going to be to divide both sides by 6. M equals 7. All right, on number 2, first thing we need to do is multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of that denominator. 0 times 5 is 0 equals 8 minus 2x. Okay. Those 5's canceled out on the right side. Still trying to get x alone, so I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. Again, I'm going to pick it up here towards the top. When I subtract 8 from 0, 0 minus 8, that leaves me with negative 8 equals, make sure you're watching your signs here. Those 8's cancel out, but that leaves us with a negative 2x. And we divide both sides by the negative 2 to get x equals 4. Make sure you're showing your work. All right, let's get into our notes. Today, we are going to be solving equations to solve word problems. Nothing you really need to write on that slide. Let's just jump into our examples. Remember, when we do these word problems, you don't necessarily have to write down word for word everything on the slide. Let's read through the problem and see what we need. Use the table to find the number of miles, x, you need to bike on Friday so that the mean number of miles biked per day is 5. So I would write down our chart here. We've got Monday through Friday and how many miles we biked each day, except you'll notice on Friday we've got an X. We don't know how many miles we need to bike that day yet. It's important here that we understand the word mean. So if you need to make yourself a note, mean is the same as the average. To find the average, we add up all the numbers and divide by how many numbers there were. Add all numbers and then divide by how many numbers there were. Okay, so that's how we're going to set this problem up. We're going to add up all of our miles together. 3.5 plus 5.5 plus 0 plus 5 plus x divided by how many numbers are there that we're including. Make sure you're including 0. We're still adding that. It's still included as a number. So we're adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of these together. Okay. We want our average to be what? They told us in the problem. They said so that the mean number or average number is 5. So that's another important 5. That's where the 5 over here is coming from. So we've set up an equation, we just need to solve it. To solve equations, we simplify first. So we can simplify everything up in this numerator. Combine your like terms. Everything can be combined except for that x. So 3.5 plus 5.5 plus 0 plus 5. What does that give me? Hopefully you said 14 plus x, still divided by 5, still set equal to 5. Now we need to solve this to get x alone. We're going to multiply both sides by 5. On the left, that cancels out. We've got 14 plus x equals 5 times 5 is 25. Next, we need to subtract 14 from both sides. And that gives me that x equals 11. So that means we would have to bike 11 miles on Friday for our average or mean number of miles biked per day to come out as 5. Okay, if you have questions or concerns about this example, write them down, make a note next to it, put a star by it, and that way you can ask me all these questions when I'm back in class. All right, let's continue on to number 2. Again, just read through it. We'll write down what's important. The formula D equals 1/2 N plus 26 relates the nozzle pressure N in pounds per square inch for a fire hose and the maximum horizontal distance the water reaches, D, in feet. Okay, so before we think about what they're asking us, let's just write down this formula because we will need that written down. D equals 1/2 N plus 26. And let's also make ourselves a little note. D stands for what? Well, it said the horizontal distance, or we'll just call it distance in this case. The distance that the water reaches. Okay, what about N? What does it stand for? That was towards the beginning. That's the nozzle pressure. Nozzle pressure. Okay, let's keep reading. How much pressure is needed to reach a fire 50 feet away? All right, which one of the variables did they give us? Did they give us the distance or did they give us the nozzle pressure? Hopefully we all know that 50 feet away is going to be our distance. So that's equal to 50 feet in this case. The nozzle pressure is what we don't know yet. That's what we're trying to figure out. So let's plug 50 in for our distance, or D, into our formula. And now we just need to solve for n. To do that, first step, hopefully you're saying subtract 26 on both sides. That leaves us with 24 equals 1/2 n. Remember, to get rid of a fraction that's right next to your variable, you multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So multiply by 2/1. That would give us that 48 is equal to n. Okay, or that our pressure is 48 pounds per square inch, or per inch squared. Make sure you're answering the question being asked, including your units. All right. Number 3, your school's drama club charges $4 per person for admission to a play. The club borrowed $400 to pay for costumes and props. After paying back the loan, the club had a profit of $100. How many people attended the play? All right, so we are asked how many people attended the play. So that's our unknown. I'm going to use a variable of p. So I'll just label that right away. P is my number of people that attended. If I made $4 per person, the word per should be making us think of what operation? Per should make us think multiply. So if I take 4 times P, that's going to tell me that I made $4 per person. That's going to give me how much money I made. But we can't just leave it at that. Even though we made money, before we did that, we borrowed $400 and we have to pay that back. So if we're paying it back, that means someone's taking that money away from us. So pay back $400. That means it's negative to us. So we're going to have 4p minus $400. After all of that happened, we had a profit of $100. So after this occurs, what we end up with is 100. Okay, so the money we made is 4p minus the money that we had to pay back, the 400, leaves us with our profit. So now we can solve this equation to figure out how many people came. To do that, what would we do first? I hope you're saying add 400 to both sides. Gives us 4p equals 500. Last step. Divide both sides by 4. And we get that p is equal to 125. So 125 people attended the play. All right, let's go to another example. Number 4. You have 96 feet of fencing to enclose a rectangular pen for your dog. To provide sufficient running space for your dog to exercise, the pen should be 3 times as long as it is wide. Find the dimensions of the pen. Okay, it's important that we know that we have 96 feet of fencing available to us. It's going to be a rectangular pen, so it might help to draw yourself a little rectangle. Okay, we've got both a length and a width. But it tells us in here that the pen should be 3 times as long as it is wide. Okay, so if we call the width W, the length needs to be 3 times that much. So 3 times W would represent my length. Okay? So now we need to figure out how to put this all together. The 96 feet of fencing is going to go around the outside edge of that. Okay, in math we call that the perimeter. So it would be helpful if we remember the formula for perimeter is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width for rectangles. But I can plug some stuff in that I know. First of all, I know that my maximum perimeter is 96. I don't have any more fencing than that. I can also replace my L with the 3W. So that way we're working with one variable. The 2W I'll leave alone. Okay, total of 96 feet, so that's our perimeter. The length is 3 times the width, so I represented that up here. L equals 3W, plugged in the 3W instead of an L. The 2W on the end stayed the same, so that way we're talking in terms of W both times. To simplify this a little bit, I can first multiply and then combine like terms. So 96 equals 6W plus 2W. Combine like terms, we get 96 equals 8W. Last step to solve this equation, divide by 8. That means that I get W is equal to 12. Okay, so my width is going to be 12 feet. What about my length? Well, we set it up here. The length is 3 times the width. And 3 times 12 gives me 36. So my dimensions would be 12 feet by 36 feet. All right, this next one is a similar example to the one we just did. It just gives us our information a little more directly. Again, it might help us to draw a rectangle here. The length of the rectangle is 3 inches more than the width. More than. So if we're again looking at our length and width, the length is 3 inches more than the width. More than means we are adding 3 onto it. Find the length and width if the perimeter of the rectangle is 98 inches. So perimeter is equal to 98 inches. All right, much like the last one, perimeter equals 2L plus 2W. Plug in what we know. We know P is 98. We know the length can be represented by W plus 3. And then we can solve this. This time, what is my first step to solve? I hope you're saying that I should distribute, because I would agree with that. When we distribute, we have 98 equals 2W plus 6 plus 2w. Next, we can combine like terms. 98 equals 4w plus 6. Start to solve. Subtract 6 on both sides. 92 equals 4w. Divide both sides by 4. And we should get w equals 23. But we were asked for the length and the width. So we have the width is 23 inches. The length is 3 more inches than that. So that makes the length 26 inches. All right, we're going to skip ahead up to example 8. I know I'm skipping some of these numbers, but I'm just picking out my favorite ones to do with you. A lion can run 18 miles an hour faster than a giraffe. So let's just convert that into an algebraic statement. A lion's speed is going to be that of a giraffe's, but it's 18 miles an hour faster. So we would add 18 to the giraffe. That'll give us the lion speed. If you need to make yourself a little key, you can put L is the lion speed, G is the giraffe speed. Okay, we are told a lion can run 50 miles per hour. How fast can a giraffe run? This one's pretty straightforward. They tell us that L is equal to 50, so we are going to plug that in. 50 equals G plus 18. Get G by itself. How do we do it? We have to subtract 18 on both sides. So we end up with 32 is equal to G. So a giraffe can run 32 miles per hour. All right, we've got some notes about consecutive integers. If x is an integer, what is the next consecutive integer? Well, this is something we talked a little bit about once before. I'm just going to get more into it now. To get to a consecutive number, you have to add 1 to it. So if x is our integer, x plus 1 is the next consecutive integer. If x is an even integer, how would we get to the next consecutive even integer? So for example, an even integer is 2, and then we're trying to get to the next even one, which would be 4. So how many did we go up? Hopefully you're saying we went up 2. So to get to the next even integer, we would take x plus 2. The one that seems to trick some people is odd integers. If x is an odd integer, like 3, what's the next odd integer? Well, that would be 5. How many did we have to add to get from 3 to 5? Only 2. We only had to add 2. So if x starts off odd and you want the next odd, you're still just adding 2. X plus 2. I would get all of these statements written down. Pause for a moment to give you time to do that. All right, if you need to, ask for it to be paused now. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Okay, here we go. Find 3 consecutive integers whose sum is 153. So 3 consecutive integers, 1, 2, 3 spots. Sum means we're doing what? Adding them together. The sum is 153. We are always going to start off with our first integer being called x. We got to start somewhere. So x represents the smallest or lowest of those integers. And then we get to the next consecutive integer. So on the last slide we talked about it. The next one would be x plus 1. But what about the one after that? Well, if we think about counting 4, 5, 6. I know those are not our integers, but if they were 4, 5, 6, from 4 to 5 we add 1. What about from 4 to 6? We would add 2, or from 5 to 6 we add another 1. So that means that our last integer is represented by x plus 2. All right, so now that we've got this set up, I'll take away my little placeholder squiggles. What can we do to solve? I hope you're saying that we can combine like terms. We've got all these x's here that can be combined. X plus x plus x. That gives us 3x. We've also got a plus 1 and a plus 2, which gives us 3x plus 3 equals 153. All right, we can keep on solving this by subtracting 3 on both sides. 3x equals 150. Last step. Divide both sides by 3. What does that give us for x? 50. Does that fully answer our question? No, it doesn't. They wanted us to find 3 consecutive integers, so we better be giving them all 3 numbers. If 50 is our smallest one, we start with 50. Consecutive to 50 would be 51, and after that we would have 52. So those are the integers we're looking for. All right, this next one is similar. Find 3 consecutive even integers whose sum is 96. So again, we've got 3 placeholders here. Sum means we're adding still. We're adding up to 96. This time though, we are only working with even integers. So x will represent our smallest even integer. What that means is that if you don't get an even number for x after you solve, something is wrong. All right, so we've got x. Our next even integer, remember, would be x plus 2. And then again, let's think about this. If we're going 10, 12, 14, those are just 3 random consecutive even integers. From 10 to 12, we added 2, so that makes sense here. But then what about from 10 to 14? Well, there we had to add 4, so our last even integer is represented by x plus 4. All right, erase my little placeholder squigglies. Now, when we combine like terms, again, we've got x plus x plus x. That gives us 3x. Positive 2 plus 4 plus 6, still equal to 96. Then we keep solving by subtracting 6 on both sides. 3x equals 90. Last step is to divide by 3, and we get x equals 30. But again, we didn't just want 30, we want 3 consecutive even integers. 30 is my smallest one. The next even integer is 32. The last one is 34. All right, we will leave it there for examples for this slideshow. Our homework is on pages 16 and 17. You are doing the numbers in those parentheses there, 15, 16, 25, 29 through 34, all of them, 42 and 44. Everyone should get to work on their homework. If you need more time getting this written down, ask for it to be paused.